Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting the session in about 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. Perfect, perfect. So if you could just place on your headset so we all can hear, that would be amazing. Thank you. Good morning to you all. It's a bright morning, not so cold, which is good. My name is Margaret Imprim. I'm with the Green Africa Youth Organization, and I'm really excited to be the moderator for today's session, which is titled Community-Led Best Practices on Food Waste Prevention, Composting, and Agroecology in Asia. And you have a couple of amazing speakers who are going to share their thoughts. But before that, just to share a little bit about what we're supposed to have at the end of the day. We're going to showcase the best practices from global south countries on food waste prevention, organics, waste management, and agroecology in the context of just transition. Also, there's going to be a launch on a new report on cutting methane emissions through zero waste food waste systems. That have two case studies from Fundación Basura in Chile and Gita Batiwi in Indonesia. Also launched the Bengaluru Declaration on Organics and Climate, which was created in Gaia, Asia, specific first Congress on Organics and Climate Change on September 2014. And lastly, we're going to have the launch of the policy brief on methane reduction from organic waste and landfills that provides recommendations from ESDO on Bangladesh and DCs. I'm going to call our speakers to just have a seat, and then we can have them one after the other to share their thoughts on the various items. The first person I'm going to call is Dr. Richard Swanell. Is he here? Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. He's with the Western Resource Action Program. Also, I'm going to call Jaya Kumar. Thank you so much. Also, I'm going to call Yobo Navyan Putra on behalf of Jita Batiwi. And lastly, I'm going to call Dr. Sharia Hussein, who is from the Environment and Social Development Organization, ESDO. Really amazing. This is like a well gender balanced group. It's really glad to have all of you here, share your thoughts. And just to mention that there's some online streaming as well. So if you have anyone who couldn't come here, you just let them know to just stream with us at the FAO Pavilion. And yeah, we'll just go straight to our first person. It's Manjiot here. Perfect. Okay, give us the opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the event, and thank you to our partners at Gaia, and it's really great to be here. So I'm representing the Global Methane Hub. I am the regional lead for Asia, and that means that a lot of the work we do on methane mitigation across the energy, agriculture, food loss, food waste, sectors in Asia is something that we target, along with other global south countries in Latin America, in Africa, and in other parts of the world. We are a philanthropic fund. We are working on reducing methane emissions across the three sectors, at least 35% by 2030. And we are supporting national governments, subnational governments, think tanks, academia, and the partners in the room, and creating a thriving ecosystem of actors to take action on waste. Per the recent Gaia study, in 2022, over 1 billion tons of food waste was produced worldwide, equivalent to around 132 kgs per person. This represents an economic loss of more than $1 trillion, affecting actors throughout the value chain, from small and large-scale producers to vendors, distributors, and consumers. And this is stark because we are living in a world where almost 800 million people suffer from hunger, and 15 million children under 5 years old are malnourished. The World Bank reports that by 2050, the world is expected to generate 3.40 billion tons of waste annually. Waste generation is generally found to increase at a faster rate for incremental income changes at lower income levels than at high income levels. The total quantity of waste generated in low income countries is expected to increase by more than 3 times by 2050. And the East Asia and Pacific region is generating most of the world's waste at 23%. So this is definitely stark because we are looking at regions like Asia, for example, which are going to be at the cusp of explosion in terms of GDP, population, lifestyles. And by 2050, there's a study that shows that non-OECD countries will be responsible for 83% of projected methane emissions. So I think the point here is that we have to come at this from a development lens. We cannot expect these countries to not grow, not have certain lifestyles. But I think this has to come from a development lens. This has to come from an environmental justice lens. And that's why we need to take action on food loss and food waste in the Global South. And that is why we at the Hub are investing in projects with local partners, which will not just help with reduction of methane emissions across the food loss and waste value chain, but also have implications for environmental justice and also integrate waste pickers and sanitation workers, which are fundamental to the system. And therefore, with partners like Gaia, C40, RMI, WRI, WWF, and our local networks, we engage with the governments and key stakeholders across India, Indonesia, Philippines to prevent food loss and waste, to segregate, but integrate EJ principles in our local, state, and national policies. As an example, we are supporting at a global level the Lowering Methane for Waste, the Low-M Coalition, of 20 organizations, subnationals including Laos, Santiago, and Rio, national governments of Nigeria, Dominican Republic, Indonesia, and Chile. And these are the countries that have also committed to the Global Methane Pledge. And under the Low-M, they commit to cutting 1 million tons of annual methane emissions from the solid waste sector before 2030. And the goal here is not just to cut the waste, but also attract climate finance, because you need the climate finance to get to these targets. So this initiative also helps unlock 10 billion in public and private investment in 40 jurisdictions and supports the organizations that are part of Low-M with policy, with technical support and capacity building, MRV to track the food loss and food waste, bring an ecosystem of new partners, and help with the NDC updates for national policies. In addition to this, we also have some important behavioral change campaigns in Mumbai, in Kusumi, in Africa, in Kusumu in Africa, sorry. And these are getting to how do you use behavioral campaigns to help households understand and bring awareness to better segregation, and link this with the local municipalities. So these are just a few examples, but you'll hear more from the panel today of the local level and national level examples of food loss and food waste prevention, and how we integrate environmental justice to prevent the catastrophic climate crisis. Thank you so much, and over to the panel.
Thank you so much. So we'll move to our first speaker, Dr. Richard Swanell, who's going to share with us a lot more about the NDCs, the food and loss waste, also climate finance for food and loss and waste. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. And what I'm going to speak about is that linking of actions on climate change with food loss and waste reduction, particularly talking a little bit around exactly what the big picture is, as we've just heard, building on that, and also talking a little bit about what actually works in countries and how that can be extended more widely across Asia as we go through. My name is Richard Swanell. I'm the Director of Impact Growth at RAP. I'll just tell you a little bit about what RAP is. RAP is a global environmental action NGO, which is about transforming our product and food systems to actually deliver circular living. We work with policymakers, we work on policy, we work on implementation with partners in around 40 countries around the world. So let's just go back to talk about the climate consequences. And this is just building on what you've just heard, the excellent speech you just heard. In essence, we're wasting about a third of all that we produce on the planet. And that has massive greenhouse gas emissions potential. For example, we reckon that food loss and waste accounts for about 8 to 10% of all global greenhouse gas emissions, which means that if food waste was a country, it would be the third biggest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions on the planet. That would be a very smelly country, but it's obviously a very substantial source of greenhouse gas emissions. And so one we've really got to tackle. But of course the other thing is, as we've already heard, methane is a key consequence of how we manage that waste. Methane from landfills, massive cause of greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore focusing on reducing methane emissions is also a key priority for many countries. The interesting thing is that at the moment 88% of countries currently don't mention food loss and waste in their NDCs. And there is an opportunity here because countries are actually looking to revise their NDCs in advance of COP30. So it's an opportunity now to actually think about incorporating something that actually tackles 8 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. And the benefits of this is because it actually reduces greenhouse gas emissions if we prevent food loss and waste, and also manage it better through circularity right across cities and right across countries. It also can improve food security. Exactly that point. 870 million people go to bed every night hungry, and we're actually throwing away a third of all the food that we produce. Surely this is something that needs to change. And it also reduces costs. By not throwing away food waste and making sure it gets to people to feed people, we're actually reducing costs for businesses, for governments, and for civil society. And so we prepared with our partners in the Global Action Drive some simple guidance to help countries actually to implement food loss and waste within their NDCs. So please do look to that link for help in that space. So what actually helps to reduce food loss and waste? Well, we found that 4 key areas make a difference. One is policies and regulations, policies around working with businesses, policies around food waste collections, food waste processing, food waste to landfill. All of these can actually help. Regulations around best before dates, use by dates, how food is redistributed, all of these can make a big difference. And also public-private partnerships we found make a big difference. What that means is bringing together partners across the whole supply chain, from retailers, manufacturers and farmers, all working together towards a common goal of reducing the amount of food waste that is produced by the food system and driving systemic change. And it's critical to put that partnership together with a clear focus on delivery. Also, capital investment, as we just heard about, is also critical to driving change, and behaviour change campaigns, working with us as citizens to help us all reduce food waste. Because one of the things that UNEP has found with its research is that actually, broadly speaking, we waste about the same amount in the home right across the world, in low middle income, upper middle income, and also in richer countries. So just taking that in a little bit more detail, the approach we use for our work with businesses is target, measure, act. We put together coalitions that actually all agree to a common target, which is the SDG goal of halving food loss and waste by 2030, and agree to report on that target on an annual basis to all of us so we all know cumulatively how the partnership is working. And then we make sure that all the businesses that are part of this are actually measuring food waste with a common methodology. If we do that, we know we can compare data. We also know that one of the barriers to action on food loss and waste at the moment is that many businesses don't measure food loss and waste and therefore don't know how much they can save by reducing food loss and waste in the first place. So, and then once we've done the measurement, we can also identify the causes of food loss and waste within that particular part of the supply chain. That's also utterly critical. And then once we've got that, we can act. And businesses can act within their own operations, but also to help their suppliers and their customers reduce food loss and waste. And one of the things we do there is also to support our behaviour change campaigns like Love Food, Hate Waste, which is operating in a number of countries around the world. So just to bring that alive, here's the story of 100 potatoes. So what happens, this is looking at a particular supply chain in the north of England and where the waste arises. We found that we lose 2 of those 100 in the field, just failing to harvest them. 9 are lost in grading. That's largely because nobody's challenged the grading size and looked at what we could do with smaller potatoes. 3 are lost in storage, but 17 are lost in packaging and transport. This isn't a very successful packaging and transport, so that's a particular hotspot to focus on. 9 are lost in the kitchen. This is a supply chain that goes into hotels. 20 is lost in preparation. Not very good at actually making the best use of all the potato that they've bought. And then because portion sizes are too high, then 15 are left on the plate and go to waste. The numbers are not important. It's the analysis that's important. And using this approach to galvanize a supply chain so that it actually drives change by focusing on those hotspots and driving change. Also, we've used this mechanism of public-private partnerships to actually increase food redistribution by putting together networks of industry, of businesses, sources of potential food waste, and food banks to help them increase the amount of food that they receive. So industry and food bank working groups, and what they do is look at barriers to actually to food waste redistribution, and then actually overcome those barriers to get to actually drive up the amount that goes there. And also it's about helping the community food banks on the ground expand so that they can actually take the food that's been identified from the various sources within the supply chain and then share best practice and invest in infrastructure in order to help make the best use of the food that is captured. And what we found is that this approach actually increased the amount of food redistribution between 2015 and 2021 by 3 times, by 300%. And so now we're redistributing about 400 million meals worth 590 million pounds in 2022. That's 170,000 tonnes per year. So a massive increase by working together and driving systemic change on this important topic. So overall, what has this impact had? So taking the UK example, food waste between 2010 and 2022 has decreased by 4.6 million tonnes in total, and that's helped reduce methane, greenhouse gas emissions by 5.4 million tonnes, of which half is attributable to methane reductions. So this works, and it's cost effective. For every $1 spent on this program, it delivered $4.80 in terms of benefits. So this approach really works. So what we're doing now is putting together a food-packed network, these public-private partnership networks right across the world, including in Asia, our partners in Indonesia, with the GRAS 2030 and working with Indonesia Business Council for Sustainable Development, and then colleagues in Australia, in New Zealand, in the Netherlands, in South Africa, in Mexico and in the USA, and of course the UK. And also we're working to develop one of these partnerships in Brazil, which will be launched next year as well. And what we're hoping with this does is it'll put a network that can share best practice and therefore drive change more rapidly and more cost effectively as a result of the cross-fertilization between Latin America, Africa and Asia. So in conclusion, tackling food loss and waste reduces greenhouse gas emissions. It's absolutely central to reducing methane emissions, is a particular benefit and something we should really focus upon. And there is a real opportunity now as countries are considering their NDCs to incorporate food loss and waste reduction within that. It makes sense, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions, it gets more food to people in need, and it reduces costs. So wasting food waste feeds climate change. Let's stop doing that. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Making sure that we have the NDCs capturing food loss and waste. Thank you so much for that. Our next speaker is Dr. Sharia. Over to you.
Good morning. I'm just sharing about the Bangladesh perspectives about the methane emission situation and way forward. So I would like to introduce my organization. This is Environment and Social Development Organization. This is an action research organization. We work since 1990. And our focus is the policy, advocacy, awareness, research, and intervention work. So in line with our work, we are working with the methane reduction issue since 2001. And with in collaboration with the GIAR, we are the member organization of GIAR as well. So let's see the situation in Bangladesh about the rapid growing of the West. West is it is a issue for all countries, mostly developing country, and as you know, the Bangladesh is a huge population with a small country, and it is the this is a huge burden of the West for the country as well. And so if we can see that the methane emission, and it is all the information here that the methane emission is more than the CO2 for the impact of the climate change. So in the policy context, in Bangladesh, Bangladesh already signed the methane placed in 2021, and but this growing process is very slow, and it is a huge gap of the policy level. So we are working on that. Now I want to share some of this situation at the West generation in Bangladesh. The Dhaka is the capital, and you can see that it is a small country, and the capital generates every day 5,000 tons of the waste every day, and it is ultimately the issue to the landfill. It goes to landfill, and within the waste generation, the total waste is about 80% is organic, and that's the issue that we haven't managed to how it can be reduced the methane emission. It ultimately goes to the landfill, dump site, and more than the dump site, if you can see the our countryside, there is no place for dumping. So people are sending the waste to the backyard, even in the agricultural field. This is rampantly going to the waste for everywhere, and the water bodies. It means that it's not only the creating the methane emission, it's also the havoc for the environment. It's creating a lot of air pollution issue. It's a issue for the water pollution. So these are also the issue in Bangladesh. So this this is the situation of the methane emission. We have done a quick and comprehensive study on the methane emission situation in Bangladesh, and with the support from CGIAR, and that shows the current situation of the methane emission, and it's approximately, you can see the situation from the landfill. And we have in the Dhaka capital, we have two designated landfill, and it's not completely we cannot say this is a fully equipped sanitary landfill. It's partially creating the sanitary landfill, but it's also creating a lot of the havocs. And so the challenge for the waste management system in Bangladesh is the collection system is not generally up to the mark, and it is a huge problem for the collection in the urban setup, and the rural setup doesn't have any collection mechanism. And the segregation also the challenge, because the source segregation is not workable, and it is still a nightmare for the municipal authority, because we have ESDO have done some work. We are trying to build some community model in urban setup and the rural setup. We are going to focus on the zero waste community, zero waste village, that integrated to the source segregation process. The problem is that during the work, I would like to share that we have managed to convince the people in the source. They wanted to segregate their waste, and we supply the 3 bins. But the problem is the collection mechanism. When the waste collection van is came, and we also introduced the 3-chamber waste collection van. That's work. But after that, the waste goes to the municipal bin and the huge container, and that is not segregated. So all waste goes to the same one place, and that goes to ultimately landfill. So this is the issue, and this is a huge issue for our country that municipal system, there is no regulations to segregation process. It is need to be addressed, and that's a serious issue. And I mentioned about the dumping the waste pickers. This is another issue for the just transition, that waste picker are not equipped, not aware about this, and the most of the waste picker are involved in the collection. They're not in a payroll. They're informal workers. So it is like a the municipal authority gives some contract to the contractor and they collect. So these people are temporary workers, and they're shifting very frequently from one place to another place. And the issue of the workers is serious, and we have found that there is a problem with the most of the worker having the respiratory problems and other skin diseases because they are not equipped with the protective equipments. And then the situation in the landfill is, I mentioned that it's not the proper sanitary landfill, and so the leaching is happening, and the even it is goes to the groundwater contaminations as well as the surface water. The key barriers and the gaps we found our study that it is need to be emphasized, and the NDCs that the current policy to the landfill is Bangladesh has set up a waste to energy plant, and it's a huge plant. The story of the plant I wanted to share with you. This is a huge plant, and there is a lot of the big investment, and the plant started 2 years before now, but it's not yet in operation. You know why? The problem is that the company are assigned to work. It's a Chinese company, and they are saying that if they start to run the system, they require the adequate waste and the segregated waste. The unsegregated waste cannot be put in the machine, and it cannot be helpful. So this is the issue, and as we know that, as of my understanding, there are many of the countries in Asia Pacific, the waste to energy is not at all successful in a plant. So this is kind of waste of money, and we don't know why donors are insisting, and why this is a business. It is completely business, but this business is not profitable. So then we have determined that we have to push forward for the composting, and we need the financing, and the climate financing need to be focused on the composting center, biogas plant, material recovery facilities. That is important. That could be addressed. And the waste picker. This is not just for the waste picker. It is on rights. It is a human rights issue. So we have to be addressed to human rights issue, and to protect the waste picker, protect the people doesn't have the voice to say their problems. So this is an important, and the data is also the limited data of the methane emission is also the barrier. So we need to work more consistently with the more studies needed, and it is not just because the Bangladesh have the study, India have the study, but we need to all study to coherent with the all data. So if we can produce 100 study report and different data, this will not work. So in that case, we need the data flow and access to information. Access to information is important. Regional information, regional cooperation is important for the methane data generation. So we need a correct and global data that could be address the proper situation. So the waste management issue, I already mentioned that this is need to be decentralized solution, engaging the community, environmental justice. The four pillars is important that should be addressed in a way. And the policy already mentioned, that is the waste management, methane reduction. The most of the country have the waste management policy, but the problem is that they are not addressing the methane emission. So it is high time to address the methane emission in the national waste management policy. Otherwise, it is incomplete. We have recommendations in the policy brief. We have developed a policy brief, and it is already given to the national government, Ministry of Environment and Forest. And on 14th, actually, we launch the report in Bangladesh Pavilion for the country situation, and we have a recommendation and policy brief we sent to. I will happy to share the policy brief here as well. This is a midterm and the long-term solution. Because of the time, I should go faster. These are the things, and these are the three models that we have already work on that. This is zero waste. Zero waste is happening. It is not a myth. It is truth. So we already have this kind of three models here, and we have in Bangladesh we have successfully implemented a zero waste village model that's worked, and we are very happy to announce that the government has already recognized that model, and they are planned to implement this model all over the country from the next year, and targeting for 8 regions. So we have we need to, that this is a time to call for action for the policy interventions, and it is important. It is not for the regionals, not for the national. This is a global issue. In conclusion, we believe that we need to work together to address the NDCs, and NDCs is not just for the country focus, it needs to be the global focus, and it's addressed to the methane emissions in line with the climate financing, and it is important. We are working on that, and we are already working with the Bangladesh government, and they are going to revise the methane NDCs by the next February. So we hope that we could include already we propose our policy brief and recommendations. So let's work together for safer planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharia. Our next speaker is Jakumar.
All right, that's okay. Okay, thank you, CGIAR, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm Yobel. I'm working from Gaia, but today I'm representing our member because Gaia is a global network of 1,000 grassroots organization worldwide on waste, climate, and environmental justice. And I'm representing one of our members from Indonesia, Gita Pertiwi, who is focused on agroecology and also on urban issues, particularly on food waste and food loss in connection with the agroecology perspective. So this is a case study that will show you that food sharing is not about methane reduction. It's also about people and justice. And this is developed in Solo, Surakarta, which is also threatened by a project of waste-to-energy incinerator supported by multi-development MDBs, multinational development banks, which is Asian Development Banks and China Construction Bank. So with that context, we see that there's a powerful tool and also models here on how we can prevent methane, but also empower communities and reduce emission fast. So a bit of the political momentum that's happened in Indonesia. So first, I want to say that Indonesia is quite unique in terms of methane profile, because if we look globally, waste methane is the third largest, right? But then in Indonesia, it's actually the reverse. Because of the population size, we are at the top, and then after that, agriculture, and then energy. But if you look at the greenhouse gas, they said like actually waste is the lowest. So we need to understand this nuance, because we don't want to swap one problem with the other, but also we see that reducing methane emission from the food waste is actually a quick wins for us. And in terms of political opportunity, we see that Indonesia actually has a new president, President Prabowo, and Prabowo has this vision, 8 top national vision, including food security, and one of the pioneer program or the priority program is free lunch, free nutritious lunch for everyone. And this poses for us a huge opportunity and also challenge, because it may create a lot of food waste and also plastic waste if not managed correctly. And Gita Pertiwi provides technical assistance at the local level in Solo, in Central Java, but also to the national government, because this has gained momentum in this year. There's going to be a provincial regulation in Solo and in Central Java on food loss and waste, and Gita Pertiwi is engaged on that. But also at the national level, there is 2 legislation that are ongoing, which Gita Pertiwi also engaged. One is a food loss and waste prevention law by the National Development Agency, and the other is by National Food Agency. So these 2 agencies are working together, and we're engaged on that process. And as I said, although it's not the biggest in Indonesia in terms of food waste production, but in Southeast Asia, it's the biggest. And for me, it's a huge missed opportunity, because the poverty line is very high, and then a lot of people cannot access food, including in Solo. And then in 2000 to 2019, we see that food loss in Indonesia was 20.5 million tons. And this is also mostly from households. But then we see that this is not only about household issue, it's the whole system issue, because as Richard from RAP mentioned, there's a lot of other sectors that also generate food waste, including retailers, hotel, restaurants, caterings, and cafes that need to be explored more. And the challenge here, what we learned in Gita Pertiwi, we conducted 2 studies. In 2018, we found that the food generation in Solo, it's only 0.49. And during the pandemic, it increased to 0.73 because people are cooking at home. They cannot go anywhere. And there's a lot of potential excess food in the hotels as well. So what we found from our study in 2021 is that in hotels, caterings, restaurants, from all the food served, 32% are potentially getting wasted. So for cities actually in Indonesia, with a lot of landfill crisis and landfill fire, because of the methane, hotel, restaurant, and cafe also serve as a low-hanging fruit for fast action on waste methane. And this is where we are developing our models. So one of the strategy that we developed is really using the environmental justice principles that Gaia created and launched in Dubai last year. But the essence here is really on the people side. So one of the aspects is to democratize the data and also science from food waste. This first step that we conducted is conduct a collaborative research with university, but then that result is being workshopped with communities, youth, hotel, restaurant, and private sectors, all of them, to understand what does this mean for everyone and what possible action we can take, and also the roadmaps. So this is part of meaningful consultation, because often governments in many parts of the world, including Indonesia, they consult it as a tick box. But here we run like almost 2-3 times consultation over several months to make sure everyone's on board. And this is at the heart of the food sharing strategy, building trust. Because the trust is essential to make sure the program has sustainability, even without or with very minimum financial support. And after all that consultation, the people who are in that group, they agreed to create a food sharing community called Care Food. And this community is basically a mix of youth, university students, women's group, food processors, and food association. And after that, they try to develop some food sharing models, and they co-develop a standard operating procedures that work for everyone. We also learn from food banking networks member in Indonesia, Food Cycle, but then we also use that as a baseline to develop a more suitable, like fit for purpose standard operating procedure for the communities. And on top of that, the groups also notice that we require a policy advocacy work, because a lot of these are actually policy at the national level on food safety and how to repackage, redistribute what is considered safe and not. And the community that I mentioned earlier, they have several tasks. First, this is our voluntary group. They are not paid at all. And they've been working for this for more than 2-3 years now. And they have been distributing excess food, organizing the food sharing activities, which I will explain after this, and then managing the storefronts where the food are shown, and also making sure the quality, the freshness, everything are ensured and safe. So these are how we look at the food sharing approach, which is people-centered. So in summary, there's 3 different models that I'm going to tell you right now. First, what we call the storefronts. This is the beneficiaries are people nearby the it's like worship place like mosque, a church, and the people who donate is basically individual donors. So this is building solidarity between local people with the other, and then it's very decentralized in a sense. So it's not centralized with a warehouse. No, it's a very small. You can see the picture later. And then the second one is direct food sharing. This one is quite different because the size of the food is quite bigger. This is coming from food producers, like frozen food producers, and also restaurants, catering, vendors of food. And they gave like 1 ton of frozen food, for example. And then this community, the Care Food community, with the guidance of Gita Pertiwi, they distributed to vulnerable groups. And then after that, the recipients, we select it by the criteria of marginalized and impacted people. So one of them is going to safe houses, and also waste picker group is one of the beneficiaries. The last one is chip redemption. And this one is a different model. The idea is to connect urban and peri-urban issues with farmers. So the idea here is to make solidarity between citizens from the city and from farmers in peri-urban area. So they buy the food that may not be bought with the fair price and share it within the community in the city. So the chip redemption model you can see here, these are the people who do the voluntary repackage the food without plastic, because we don't want unintended consequences by saving food but generating plastic, which is fossil fuel. And the key features here is really rural and suburban area that builds empathy, build connections, and also they share local knowledge on how to treat the food. As Richard mentioned, the 100 potato story. Some of them actually lost because of the less of the knowledge is lacking on how to preserve and treat food in a manner that's not generating waste. And the other is really to shorten the distribution chain. If we look at the whole supply chain, one of the emission factor is really in distribution and transportation. Now, because this is happening in the local communities, it's really cutting a lot of emission from the transportation. The second one is storefront models. This is where people gather in community centers, in mosques, in churches, where basically you can see that people are putting this in the storefronts, and there's a volunteer who manages the storefronts regularly to make sure the quality of the storefronts, the food, and everything are proper. And then this being done 24/7, meaning everyone can access these storefronts anywhere, anytime, including waste pickers. And then one other thing is we have 12 storefronts in Surakarta and Solo, and several other regencies nearby Solo. So this is being spread because of the community felt this has a value, and they have common vision and common trust among one another that makes from 1 during the pandemic and then growing to 12 now. And the other one is direct food sharing model. This is a bigger scale because this is connecting the food producers with the local communities. And then one of the important part is the learnings of the protocols, because this is a massive size. So as standard operating protocols, we learn it from the food bank groups, food cycle, and then we train the communities on how to do that. One interesting story is that it's actually becoming a learning centers for youth as well. and also for caterers and food association, because like these people, including a women's group, they help to repackage, but also sometimes they cook the fresh food into edible food. So it's almost becoming a center for people to meet and gather. Therefore, there's more social benefits to it. And from all the three models, some of it, the beneficiaries are waste picker fighting incineration in Putri Cempol landfill. These are displaced people because in 2019 and 20, the incinerator being built by support of China and Japan, basically, they have the access to landfills closed, so they cannot take recyclables. And there are several landfill fires. In fact, this week there's a landfill fire in Putri Cempol landfill. And on this, you can see in this picture that these are the local community, including waste picker. They are protesting to the local government because there's a toxic ash being dumped randomly and without any safety on the landfills, and they cannot take recyclables. So this means they have less livelihood standards. And by having the food sharing models, as you can see on my left side, they gain the food nutritious but also free, and they gain the solidarity because they start to talking to one another to look on the solution side on methane, which also cause a lot of leachate issues, which mentioned by CGIAR. So some recommendations. One, we see that there's an economic savings model, as Richard said. The biggest benefit is savings, but it's also a challenge because from the financier perspective, this is not interesting. Savings is not a language that they are used. And what we've seen so far with 63,000 kilograms being saved, we can save basically 63,000 US dollar in the excess food distributed. So there are some savings model there. But then this requires a policy that enables this to scale up, but also to sustain. First, what we see is that there's a need for a tiered legal umbrella from the central government to local government, a clear mandate on how to prevent food loss and waste. And NDCs is one of them, definitely. And the second one is the cooperation between government institution and also with the other corporations and also private sector. And then the third one is on how this collaborative program is gaining support from the government, especially for redistribution. This is one of the costs that are now being paid by the donors of the food, because they just do that. They know this is the right thing, so they just give the money for free and cover the cost. But then the other part is really to digitalize the food sharing programs. Now, one of the potential loss is if the people put the food on the storefronts or in the food banking, people may not know that there is still food there. So digitalization with some investment will be working as well. And then the biggest issue that we've seen is the sectoral process within the government, because this is a multi-sectoral, agriculture and also food, and waste and environment. Often these people are not talking to one another. And this is why we think that environmental justice principles is key, because this makes people to talk to one another, multi-stakeholder, agreeing on the common vision and also what's the roadmap for the action. So we are launching this case study here today. I just mentioned the case from Indonesia, but there's also another one from Chile that we can explore later. But this one is a different model because this is working with wet market. But all of these two are supported by Global Methane Hub. So thank you to Global Methane Hub. And you can scan here and read more about the case studies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now our final speaker. Over to you.
Thank you, Margarita. Allow me to talk about a bit more complementary to what the earlier three presentations. And here, one of the problems is that we have not done much of the analysis and valued it in numbers. This is probably, I call it as composting agroecology into a climate action, which was not the intention of the work. It just actually happened like that. We had, our city had a, like in many, I come from Kerala, which is a southern South Indian state, and I come from the capital of Kerala, which is the close to the tip of the South Indian map, if you see the India's map. We had a proposed waste management right from the beginning in 2000, when the country had its waste management law, and then the first centralized composting plant was set up in 2001. but by 2012 we had what you see in the picture, the residues from the composting plant and all the problems, because there is no segregation before collection, so all the unsegregated waste came, and as you can guess, the local community was against it. Finally, the government didn't act at the time when they should have acted, so resulted in the highest court in India, the Supreme Court, just banging, saying that close it down, do whatever you are supposed to do under law. So that created a huge opportunity for the local government. So it started looking at things like, because we have a highly literate society and highly literate communities, it is much more difficult to convince the community about centralized management, because all our history of the previous decade is failures. So the community was strongly opposing that. So many of us, we started working together with the local government. And initially the pipe in this corner was the top corner was the one which they said, okay, you put the waste in there. So, but it composts, because if we do, in a sense in Kerala, we have a lot of rain. So if you don't allow the water to make anaerobic digestion, the normal throwing down could create aerobic digestion with very minimum methane, so it doesn't stink, it just gets into compost over a period of something like 60 to 90 days, which many people do. So what in Trivandrum, what it started with, as probably in my earlier presentation from Gaia, my colleague might have said about what we do is an overflow of the decentralized system. So we look at the homestead as the minimum or the starting unit. So whatever they can't do, it overflows into the community level, and then from there it goes to the city level. So you have a case here with the biocomposter, which was an improvement on the pipe. So the biocomposter will take a waste from a house for something like 4 members over a period of month. You can fill 1 chamber. So 3 months, the first chamber will get into compost, so you can use as composting. So then there is a need for this overflow, like you have 4 people, but you may have guests, and then you have more waste. So the bottom here is the community level composting, which is managed by the city corporation, where you can take your excess composting, and again it is aerobic composting, developed with the help of agriculture university, called Tumburmuri composting, where 1 ton of waste can be processed in a 1 square meter box. On top of it, the rural areas, they started coming with these 2 options. One, under the National Rural Employment Program, people helped to create these pits where they could put the waste, and the bottom of the pit is to the soil, so it naturally get picked up by trees and plants, or if you can also open the mouth and take the compost out for farming. So other one is the shed, where in some places they use it with vermicomposting. Generally it is used as aerobic, because aerobic is much more easier to handle. So this created an opportunity where the immediate crisis of centralized waste management was replaced by this overflow of decentralized waste management. That helped communities to move a lot in terms of taking responsibility. And also there is a very co-benefit of this program. Like when we had the centralized waste management plan, which created that mountain of waste, the city of Trivandrum was spending about 1.2 million Indian rupees worth of money for buying diesel to transport the waste. So the moment it was stopped, the city literally saved 1.2 million 1.2 million diesel cost, which is per month, and which creates a huge potential for saving and emission reduction on that side. So now what happened is as you know, the marketplace and the demand creates opportunities. So now earlier we started with the plastics. There is a lot more thinking about plastics. So people are moving into pot. This is much more easier, and you get more aeration, so less stinging, more beautiful. Unlike the earlier times where the waste is collected in the backyard where nobody wants to see it, now people keep it in the front. And they show that this is my composting. So my son has done this, or my daughter has done this, or this I am doing. So this becomes a conversation point. And in rural areas, my organization, Tunnel, was pushing for this, because mostly, especially when we have high rains, and especially this year, we are suffering from what you can probably say the climate change impact. We are on the 11th month of the year 24. Every month we had rains in Trivandrum. So the problem is when you do something like this, the agricultural residues are collected and dumped in the fence composting, so the water drains. And if you don't do it, then it stays there and then creates anaerobic composting and creates stinking, sometimes dispute between neighbors because your stuff is stinking there. So this was something which was practiced in northern part of Kerala, but we now mainstreamed into all rural areas or farms, so we create a lot more compost for farming. The city of Trivandrum now, some of the waste management is photo opportunities. This is our sanitation worker cleaning up the road. Earlier, 20 years back, they will just burn it. Now they collect it on a dry leaf collector, which is later picked by the other staff who will come and use it for compost management. And especially wet compost coming, dry leaves help us in improving the quality of compost and the more carbon, so the carbon nitrogen ratio is also met. It is also interesting to see how sometimes the local government can step up the interventions. So you see in Kerala now we have what we call Harida Karma Sena, which is a green action team. So this green action team is comprising of self-help groups, mostly women, but there are also men in that. So they are officially designated by the local government as the people for managing waste in the local government. So they can collect subscription from houses for services like collection of non-biodegradables from home, and they connect it to the secondary market for recycling, which is a small thing. But again, how do you teach people to segregate? In our local governments, they learned it very easily, like the collection of plastics 3 times a day, 3 times a week. So you can't give it every day. So you have all your shoes or waste discards of that nature, leather discards, it is once in a month. Bottles once in a month, clothes once in a month. So all your things get collected, segregated. So as CGIAR was saying, the problem of mixing gets managed because it goes straight to the MRF where the cloth will be managed. It goes straight where the glass will be managed. And then what we realized that the subscriptions may not bring enough money for the women to do it. And there is also this demand from, especially when most of the old age families where they do composting, but they need a little bit of help. So these people take a little bit of a small subscription, or sometimes if they're coming from financially bad backgrounds, they do it free. And if it is very poor, the local governments will pay the service charges for the service provider from their budget, so the people don't need to worry about it. And now we are in Kerala providing around 4,000 jobs, where again these women earn, because these are independent groups, they are not getting salaries. They get money by subscription, they get money by selling the discards to the secondary market. So there are people who earn as high as $1,000 a month, which is a quite decent salary in our economy. And it is officially designated by the government, and they are responsible for it. One of the interesting forward linkage was when the waste started coming in, how do you encourage people to use waste? Because earlier we created a network of picking compost from the homes and connecting to the farmer, but it was not really working because the cost of transport actually increases the price. So then when we give the compost bin, we give 3 grow bags free. So they can start their own grow bags, and right now the city is pushing for replacing grow bags with pots. So the roofs or the backyards, you have a lot of agriculture happening where the grow bags and saplings are given, and every 3 months they can get fresh saplings from the government. And there is also support of backend where like my organization, we offer a backend support through digital. If they send pictures, we will advise them what to do with, like, is there a nutrition deficiency or is there a pest attack? There is a technical support which goes, and in case if there is somebody to go and spray the botanicals or bio inputs, that will be done at a very nominal cost of something like 20 rupees in Indian context, which is maybe less $0.25. So that becomes very affordable, because if you don't make it affordable, then it doesn't work. So and that is again where the policy created a lot of new jobs. Many people who got out of the job are starting startups which are managing urban gardening. They come and do as a service of reporting. They look at, so in a sense, there are a lot of new opportunities, and there are markets are connecting to that. But the important point is the people are getting nutritious food. Like in the agroecology conference, the EU was talking about 5 colors to eat every day. So here you have 5 different bags and you get a lot more vegetables, which is much more confident. And some of our people are saying that the tomatoes in the rooftop is picked by the kid, and they ate it fresh because there is nothing to worry about the quality, or there is no need for food safety. What we are seeing is a huge co-benefit where probably the map shows the red pins are where typically vegetables comes to our city. So when this is what I was saying, like when we thought composting, we didn't really think about the agroecology as a component of that. And when now see that other than the co-benefit of saving the cost of fossil fuel for transport, now we found that we get vegetables from as distant as Bangalore, and then we took the average, and there are certain vegetables like the cool season vegetables which we can't grow in Trivandrum. So we discounted that, and the actual vegetables which we can grow locally, when the people started growing it, city can save a minimum of 22,000 tons a year just on the savings of cost of diesel. So there is one more interesting point which we are seeing, that probably you have a kind of a circular economy where the waste is now converted into agroecological thing, and then it is now consumed locally. So the local nutrition, if you look at more than color, is one of the crises the world faces is the nutrition deficiency. So that is also addressed, and it creates a lot more like in our city, the chief ministers, the head of the head of the state office in Kerala called the secretariat. They have a lot of grass lawns earlier, and all is converted into pots and vegetables now. And there is a WhatsApp group where the staff can place orders for their vegetables, and if there is surplus, the neighbors can go and buy it. So the lawn has suddenly become a productive expense. When it brings income, earlier it was expenditure to maintain the lawn, and now every year it has become a political opportunity for the chief minister or the ministers in Kerala to go and plant, go and harvest. So it sends a message to the people that even the cabinet is growing their own food. So why don't you do it to yourself? So that is an interesting point which we could do. And in a sense, what in Kerala, what we see, especially when we sit in the FAO pavilion, that now we are looking, the state is putting this extra effort of converting the landscapes to foodscapes. So we have a consortium of funders who have come together as CAT, which is called Consortium on Agroecology Transition. They are supporting landscape level interventions, and we are now trying to hook up with local governments and district level interventions, where we are also trying to build in Kerala the dimension where it becomes a landscape. I can also share that Tunnel, my organization, is partnering with our Department of Agriculture in Kerala, and we are certifying around 50,000 farmers to go organic this year. So it has started, and they are in the year 1, and next 2 years we have completed the process, and by 2026 we will have 50,000 farmers certified organic who will be producing mostly for territorial markets or the local markets. But of course, when there is larger production, there will be also exports to the rest of the world. So this, we are also happy that my organization runs this small center called Agroecology Center, where we are looking at there's few examples in the time of crisis. We always look at paddy as one crop. The paddy here you are seeing in that small boxes are 350 different paddy. Each is indigenous paddy, and we are seeing on the occasion of climate change some response to the changing climate. So what you can call as a climate resilient crop. And we are also looking at for example, traditionally one of the paddy varieties is 2 months old. So in period of 60 days you can harvest. with the change in climate, the day has become now almost 86 days. So there is a behavioral change in plants also. So we are looking at all that adaptations, and there are also quite funny things. If you look at that, we have around 350 different indigenous varieties, and this is the on the other side of the picture you are seeing is the forest, and we get elephants. Elephants come and eat only one variety out of the 350. They don't eat other things. So they also have choices to make. So it is a very interesting place. We get a lot of knowledge and information about what is happening, and we are quite happy to this opportunity. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you very much for hearing.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited that we have very real solutions happening, like possible solutions, and this definitely is serving as a source of inspiration for all of us from various parts of the world we're coming from. Now it's time to ask questions. So if there's anything you want to find, I'm just going to sit here. And if there's any question anyone would want to ask speakers, anything you want to also comment on, we have some few minutes for that. Okay.
Thank you so much for all your presentations. Very interesting and inspiring. I had a question for you for tunnel. I think two actually. One is the model that you have in Kerala. Are there similar models you're thinking about scaling to other states, and what's the openness there? Or is it very localized and there's something you are trying to just keep in Kerala? The second one is interested in the paddy work that you have, and is this something you're partnering with some research labs on what kind of varieties are best with the changing climate? So wanted to understand who are your local partners for Kerala. We have some ongoing work in Tamil Nadu on behavioral change and capacity building of farmers with Tamil Nadu Ag University. So wanted to see what's happening more in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think one of the important outcome which we had in the Gaia Organic Congress in Bangalore was sharing this experience from across members. And one of the other hotspot where a lot of urban farming happening is in Bangalore. But it was surprising for us after the Congress, some people came to us and they said they want to know the way we do in Trivandrum, and they want to pick it for a Bangalore small community. So to be honest, yes, we are always willing to share, and we always share to localize to that context, because some of the things which work in Trivandrum may not be straight away working as it is. So you need to make the modifications. So we are very much doing it, and we are scaling up with other conversation with several smaller partners in India and trying to expand it. And we also share some of our insights, like we have created videos on preparing the biocontrol agents, preparing the biopesticides. So it is all open source. So and we don't do any kind of no, it is all public domain. So we share with people. Second, all of the tunnel work is mostly linked with technical experts. We collaborate with the agriculture department. We collaborate with the Kerala Agriculture University. More than that, we are also working with institutions across, like we have a running collaboration with a German Hohenheim University, which is one of the largest university which has invested in agroecology. We have a Canadian university partnership, so we look at on an academic scale, and we are also publishing our work on learnings in journals and peer-reviewed journals as far as possible. We open it up with some of the other, as you know, most of the mainstream agriculture people are not much interested in agroecology. So there are people who are very keen and passionate. So we get agriculture economists, soil agronomics people. So there are a lot of people collaborating. So worth it. And we are also seeing, some of the learnings come from farmers. In the state of Kerala, in all the districts now, and especially in Wayanad, the farmers who got the seeds from Department of Agriculture, it couldn't survive the climate variance, because as I told you, where we get 4 to 5 months of rain in a year, we are getting 11 months of rain, and it impacts. So the farmers found that the traditional indigenous varieties are resilient and they are surviving. So there is a huge pressure on government to supply the indigenous seeds. So in that context, our work became much more relevant because the department and the university could check with us which are suiting, and which, I mean, again you see paddy, there is paddy for the mountains, there is paddy for the midlands, paddy for the coastal region. So you really need to have that specific knowledge to share indigenous seeds to farmers, otherwise it doesn't work.
I want to add because I think Tanal is being too humble on that. Because even before Organic Congress, the first Organic Congress in Bangalore this year, I remember before I joined Gaia, I worked for a member of Gaia Indonesia called YPBB. And then Tanal basically visited Indonesia and then shared the knowledge. What we found is that the knowledge sharing that's been done by the government, usually it's almost like north-south. So this government in Indonesia have the tendency to look for models in Japan, China, and some European countries, mostly Nordic countries, on waste management. But that is not working because of the budget differences. Like in Indonesia, our municipal budget, we found it's only 0.65. And then in Jakarta, it's 3%. But then even for 3% in Jakarta, the capital, it's still not enough, and it's still for a model that is, meant for throwing away things on dump sites. But in Tanal, in Kerala, we learned that you can do actually composting pretty much everywhere. Like I learned the first thing about biogas being implemented underground because you don't have space, and then how you do like it's not a curbside, recycling. It's like you're doing composting, on the sidewalks, and home composting was a powerful tool. And all the green protocols and everything. I think the beauty is that through Gaia Network, Tanal's work has impacted Indonesia, in Bandung first, but now it's spread into 5 different cities in Indonesia through the Alliance for Zero Waste Indonesia, and also in the Philippines. So the technology that is being used in Kerala, now you can find it partially, some of them, in the Philippines. So I think the South-South learning is key here. And it's also the local context. One of the environmental justice principles that I have is to build from local knowledge. Because we've seen that the knowledge from machineries from the north doesn't really fit to our budgetary and political context. So yeah, that's my addition.
Through the Pesticide Action Network, it has moved to Bangladesh, Nepal, and Ethiopia. So we are connecting with both Asia and African continents.
Thank you very much. I'll give room for 2 more reflections. Yes? Yes, okay. Just going to give this to you. Okay.
So thank you very much, Chayan, and all for your sharing. It's really interesting to see like how with the involvement of the community particularly, like how you are doing this. And I'm Chatu from Sri Lanka, and I'm also working with the rural women farmers, and we are also practicing the compost preparation with our own knowledge, and our women are sharing those knowledge to other women, connecting with the various network. The one thing I wanted to, one reflection was it was quite different, like once we talk about the urban waste management and also the rural waste management. So I just wanted to know, is there any, because I think like once it comes to the urban waste management, the government role is so important and also the policies are important. So is there any examples that you can tell maybe or share where government play a role collecting and the waste and segregating and give those waste to the community-led organizations or community-led producers who produce compost. It means like as a raw materials. Is there any way that government play a key role to collect, segregate, and then connect it with the community-led organizations to produce compost, and they will do the value addition and release? The other thing is there any, because in Sri Lanka we have a lot of food waste in the trade center. It means like in Sri Lanka, the food supply chain, where from all the district they bring to one place, then from there they distribute again to the same district. It's quite crazy, like they collect and they then the price is so high and the waste is so high. I think like more than 30% as you shared, like it food waste. So is there any examples that in your countries maybe you produce the compost centers, like compost production center near to this handling or trade center of the food, if there are any examples?
Okay, thank you very much. And actually, we are initiating with the local government authorities, like a city corporation in Dhaka, and in the semi-urban setup, we call Poro Sabhas like that, in the district level. So it is not in place to the policy, but beyond the policy. But the government, actually the public representative, we convince them to pick up some systems. So in the northern part of Bangladesh that we are working is called Rangpur as a district setup. So we convinced the mayor that at least you can provide some space to have the composting plant. So he took the initiatives, and there is a composting plant. So all the composting waste are collected from the different part of the city and goes to there for the composting plant. And that plant is decentralized already, and one entrepreneur is taking over to produce the compost. And also the segregation process is there. The other segregations like the organic waste goes to directly to the compost plant, and other segregated like the metal and other materials that can be recycled, and the recycler collect from there. So that already set up, but it is not placed in the government policy. It is the influence by us and other groups to directly to the public representatives, and he took the initiatives, and it is really workable. And to following this model, at least the 5 small district town are following the same setup. So hopefully that will be comes to the policy, and we are focusing on that.
All right.
Just to add quickly, so Gaia, we conducted a study with Climate Policy Initiative, and then we launched the findings last week. One of the findings, so we study Indonesia and Brazil, but this is the findings from Indonesia. A lot of the issues about the cost for composting or organics management are actually the costs associated with transportation and land. And what's interesting is that most of the land is actually state-owned or government-owned. So some of the models or recommendation is really for the government to give away the land for waste picker cooperatives, local communities, so they can use it freely, that impose no cost. And another model is in, this is a different study, but from our member from Groundworks in South Africa. They work with the government with collaborative processes, multi-stakeholders, and then with the government, they connect the government of gardens with the environment and waste management. So the Department of Gardens, they gave their garden area, the public garden space, for doing composting. So this costs almost zero. And then also the transportation, they basically reorganize the system, so it also imposed no cost. And the process is really savings, because this is often overlooked by government on the savings model. And it's really, the bottom line here is, in Gaia, we see that waste management is an essential public service. This means market has a role, but it's not the bottom line. The bottom line is public finance. So public finance can be done by shifting current finance from harmful to impactful, from incineration, RDF, burning stuff that is high capital and very expensive, to these local and ground solutions by communities. So yeah, we are out of time, right?
Can I just stand? Yeah. Out of time? Yeah. So just quickly, Kerala, we have done this, and you will see the government, what they have done is, on one side they have set up the facilities, and then second part they also have come with standards where they are accrediting specialized agencies. The many community-based organizations and communities are accredited by the government to offer services. So that makes a good kind of initiative. And of course, there is a lot more buy-in, like the community people who are working on issues are adopted to the local governments, are experts, so they guide the whole thing.
Okay, so we have 3 minutes left, so I don't know. Any final reflection? Okay, Shivu? Yeah. Okay, just.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've run out of time, so I'll just make it quick. I'm from Ghana. I work in the private sector for a company called the Jospon Group of Companies, and I'd like to applaud all our panelists for the good work that they're doing for the environment. In Ghana, I'd like to say that most of the things that I've listened to so far are being done in Ghana as well, but from the private sector perspective. And we've collaborated with the government in Ghana to set up recycling plants in almost every. Ghana has 16 different regions. So what we've done is to partner with government and the local people to set up recycling plants in each of these 16 regions, where we recycle and convert solid municipal waste into compost. These plants are about 400 tons per day capacity, and so it has really encouraged people to segregate their waste right from homes. But these plants also have the abilities to separate these wastes. So we have the compost being converted into compost. The plastics are also recycled and used for other plastic products as well. So I think it's very encouraging to see that similar things are being done across the world. And I would like to say that Ghana is also very open to such partnerships and collaborations.
And we have Shibu giving us the closer remark.
Can you slides? Thank you. I'm not taking much time. This is a couple of announcements on this regard. Gaia is working on specifically on methane. Lowering organic waste methane is one of our target, and we are approaching it from different perspectives, not just from farming or not just from municipal waste management. We are trying to link it with a kind of a holistic approach of agroecology, food loss and food waste, and organic waste recovery. So we have come up with a platform for cities who commit for reducing organic waste methane by 2030. So there is a cities or local governments methane pledge. This has been currently subscribed by like about 50 cities in Philippines, India, and Nepal, and we are expanding this year to other regions at the global level. And this is somewhere the cities are accepting or committing to create systems to reduce food waste, food loss, as well as to capture organics through composting or biogas, and linking it with forward linkages to the agriculture. And recently we had Organics Congress in Bangalore, and it came up with a Bangalore Declaration. You can take a copy of it. It is here. So Bangalore, it was attended by 200 people from different segments, like including academics, think tanks, businesses, civil society organizations, government officials, and city leaders. And this is a platform to exchange. There was a question about like exchanging knowledge. So this is a platform for exchanging knowledge, building a network for businesses, as well as to promote the campaign to bring down methane from organic waste sector. You can get connect to the Gaia team so that you can get more information. As well as we are also added to it a Zero Waste Academy, which give technical training on and hands-on training on organics management at household level and at city level. And we have come up with a framework on environmental justice. When you do zero waste, when you do work on lowering organic waste methane, you have to ensure that you are supporting the people who are working in this sector, mostly waste pickers and waste workers, and the informal sectors, the farmers. So we have come up with a framework for that. So this shows how to do that work for the cities. This is a guideline, it's a checklist. And we have come up with a NDC checklist for the countries. You can just look at it. This publication is available in Gaia's website. This gives you a checklist. What are the points you should not miss while preparing NDCs on your methane work, especially at the waste sector, and which actually focuses on environmental justice, as well as the kind of priorities has to be given, especially waste hierarchy. Instead of generating more waste, you have to bring down the waste, and you have to work with a kind of like a holistic approach for a systems change. And thank you.
Thank you to our speakers, and thank you so much for being with us for an hour and 30 minutes. Thank you so much. So we take a photo. Hi, Shibu. We need you here.